Hey traders, this is Taylor with Top Pick Trading. I want to give you guys your Friday bar by bar. It is June 14th, 2024, and this will be our lesson for the day. We're looking at the ES 2000 tick chart, and let's get started. So you'd come in and you'd see that we had a huge downtrend through the overnight. It looks like you could draw it off the tops here, and it actually fits pretty well. It's still in place, so I'd be expecting a new low on this downtrend. You could draw your overnight highs and lows, but since it's such a range, since it's such a trend, it probably won't come into play too much, but we'll keep an eye on this high and low. We would draw also this micro uptrend here is pretty strong. Let's see what happens at the EMA. So you can see right here, right at 8 o'clock, you come in and you get a first entry, second entry. It hasn't triggered yet. I would be leery of this because your signal bar is right here, and then you got an inside bar. Not to mention this huge downtrend needs a retest. So looks like you could have gotten maybe a really small scalp. It comes back and it gets the new high. So now we're thinking probably a downtrend, but let's see what happens at the EMA. It's chopping sideways, pushes higher. We have some resistance level right in this area here. And it pushes out of that right into the open. I'd still be a little bit leery of longs. And it appears like we are chopping higher, maybe in some type of spike and channel. This actually holds pretty well. And it's just flying above that EMA, and the bias may be switching, but we may want to correct about 50% of this downtrend before a resumption. Let's see how far we are. And we're past that. Sometimes it'll correct about 2/3, which is this right around this level right here, a little bit higher. But we are rather bullish. Let's see what happens at the EMA. We get a first entry long and second entry long bar potentially right here, but it's closing below the EMA, and you have 4 bear bars in a row. And then I think we had a 10 o'clock news item, so you'd want to wait a couple minutes before this. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. You should be ready for that at 10 a.m. And you can see it rejected strongly, but let's let it cool down a little bit from that news. And we may have some downtrend working now. That actually fits pretty well. Maybe a little overshoot on it. Let's see. Let's delete this for clarity. Pushing a lot lower. Let's see if we can come back to the EMA and see if the EMA holds. This may want to retest, but this was so strong through the overnight that this is probably going to be the main play. So let's see. And we get this bar here. This is, you technically have an equal low here, but you can see how much higher that body finished. So this looks like a visual second entry short at the EMA. There's a couple ticks of wick at the lower side, but I think this may be worth taking a risk on. I'll mark it aggressive just because the signal bar is not all that great, and it's technically a double bottom. Notice this also bouncing off that opening level. Those often come into play. So I think this is a decent trade here. This is the second time that the EMA rejected strongly. You can see right at that 10 o'clock news it did. And then here, once again, right at the key entry point in EMA. And you can see that would have worked nicely. Still chopping lower. And we bounce here right around this level from earlier that we bounced. So we'll mark that. Maybe we can get another second entry short. And it seems like we're reversing pretty strongly. So we draw our micro trend. Pushing strongly to the upside, just really far from the EMA. And we get this second entry long. If you entered this, I completely understand. I think there's a couple ways you can avoid it. You can see that it would have failed. So we're still expecting this downtrend to very likely retest. Also this downtrend as well. Notice how we just tested that EMA twice and it held. This is the first push above the EMA. Often those first pushes end up, first pushes above the EMA after it's held often end up retesting the low still. And also, you can see these bodies are equal right here. So this looks, it kind of looks like a second entry long, but you could really still consider this just a first entry. So if you took that, I completely understand. But it's hard to trust the first bounce on that EMA when the overall bias has been down and the EMA just held twice. So it would have failed, unfortunately, if you did take it. We have a downtrend working now. Chopping, bouncing a little bit below that level from earlier, pushing higher now. So This area seems to be some pretty strong support right in here. I'd be leery of entering a short now at the EMA. You can see we're pushing above it anyway. So, and we get this higher low. I'm still worried that we may get an overall downtrend retest, and also this downtrend may want to retest as well. There may be a little overshoot on this one. It's hard to tell. That would have worked nicely. So if you took that, it worked for you. But for me, I just had to avoid it. It moved rather far to consider it just a higher low as well. Pushing strongly to the upside. Once again, really far from that EMA. We get a first entry new high. And just now rejected at the EMA again, but your uptrend had played out. Higher low, bad bar. Still pushing higher. Maybe there's some spike in channel, but it looks weird since we got the new high first. So this looks okay, but just the way it corrected to that EMA, I don't trust it as much as a higher low. This may just, or excuse me, as a spike in channel, this may just be a break and a couple legs up. This is a major resistance level, so let's watch it. Pretty nice bar, but that EMA is still holding and just a higher high. So let's see. You get one more higher high, and it pushes down. Now we have a strong micro downtrend pushing below that EMA, and this appears like it's forming some type of range. So let's draw that. Still thinking that downtrend may retest, but now we've pushed above that EMA several times. Also broke this pivot point just barely. So let's see. Strong downtrend now. Maybe something can come back to that EMA and we get another short, kind of similar to this one here. And we bounce, and we get 4 strong bullish bars again. So now we've got a micro uptrend working. We get a first entry long, and we get the second entry long, kind of far from the EMA. Not too far, but just barely touched on that wick. I'm worried that this downtrend wants to retest. This is a really strong move, so this is starting to look very V-shaped. Also, just a little bit of congestion in there. So I think you want to avoid that. Would have worked. It's tough to know. Now we're pushing higher again, made another higher high here. So maybe you start watching something like this. In real time, it felt really wide, so I didn't trust it much, but the highs hold fairly well. Same with the midline, so I think it's wise to probably keep an eye on this. Make this brown. Oh, well, whatever. Gets another new high. This resistance level seems to be traveling just a bit, maybe something like this. Get a first entry. Now we're pushing lower once again. Very difficult to read this. Bouncing back above the EMA. 3 strong bullish bars, and then a fourth one with a little bit of wick. We get a first entry short, and we get a second entry short right here. I actually got fooled on this one. I took this. I saw this as a triple test short. I thought there was some room here, but I think the clue here was coming up short right here, coming up short of that resistance. This didn't retest, so that tells you something bigger is probably at play. It fooled me, but I think there's also some reasons I should have seen in real time to avoid that. You see, it would have failed. Now we're pushing higher once again. It appears like your micro uptrend had played out, but now that we keep pushing higher, maybe there's something wider, like this. Pushes right up to that upper side of the trend line. Pushes higher again, maybe an overshoot. It appears this is probably still in play. And we get a first entry, comes back to the EMA. We get the second entry, not the best bar. It's pretty tempting. The bigger structure may be overshoot, so that's something to be worried about. But now we get another bar that made an equal low. This is a little tricky because you could enter either on this bar on the break above or above this bar. I think this one's okay. You probably want to get out before this resistance. You can see it rejects really hard here. And we get this higher low, a little upper wick, kind of closing high. So if you entered this, you could have gotten, it appears, a small scalp, and then it would have stopped you if you went for it much more. Let's see. It went right at 2 points, so only a small scalp would have worked there. Unfortunate because it seems pretty decent. A little bit congested by the time the higher low forms, so I wouldn't enter that. But you know, entering either of these is viable. It's not great. So if you took it and it failed, It's unfortunate, but you could have gotten a small scalp. Pushes lower. There's some type of range in here, but even the lows on in aren't holding now. You get a second entry long, but forming in a bad spot. It rejects. Would have stopped you. This is kind of wide here, so it doesn't look all that great. Maybe it's just something more intermediate like this. That looks okay. Rejects once again. Get a second entry long, but it's not really at the key entry point. Pushes down, bounces strongly. Get this other this first entry short at the EMA, and it doesn't trigger anyway. Pushing a lot higher. Micro uptrend here. Comes back. We get this technically a second entry short, but it's pretty congested in there. This uptrend doesn't have a retest, and it's closing rather low, so this is starting to look very V-shaped again like earlier. And now we bounce strongly. We get this higher low. Not that great of a bar. It is testing this resistance area from the upper side, but I would have wanted a little bit better bar. And then at this point, I started wondering, maybe it's one of those odd channels that has this early break that's kind of ignored. You can see it fits decently well still. Upper side actually holds better like this, but you get this weird early close, and that happens sometimes. But this channel overall, I think at this point you can start to trust, because that upper side holds, that midline holds, and it fits rather well off the lows. Just that one odd break there. Pushes higher, and we get this failed second entry short. Felt like it moved a bit far up here to consider it, but man, that bar is really nice. So if you took that, I understand. I'm a little worried because it's coming off these highs again, or rather close to them. Yeah, you can see it just barely touched those highs. So maybe we can get a second entry long here. The other issue is how you see this locally. If you see this as the retest leg of this trend, then maybe you are a little more skeptical. This kind of felt like a trend in and of itself here. Your downtrends had played out, and that bar, if you saw this form, it dropped here and then instantly reversed. So let's see if we can get a second entry long, and we get one here. It's really big, and it forms far from the EMA, so close to that resistance as well. This is probably going to want to retest, unless you saw it as the second leg of this one. But the bar is really nice. EMA is now holding for 3 swings, once, twice, 3 times. It came off that lower side of that little bit odd uptrend here. So if you drop a limit on this, I think it's okay. You need to get out before those highs. So I'll mark this aggressive. You really need to take a limit on this though. And it would have filled you depending on how you entered it. If you entered it on a limit after engulfing, I think it came back. But if you waited for the break above, you would have had to wait till this bar retraced. And it scares you a little bit, but it ends up working. So still really aggressive in my opinion. You can see it gets right to those highs, and then now it's past 330. So you can see how the day finished. That key entry point actually came up short of it again, and then it pushed higher. So tricky day once again, really tricky day. I got fooled on that short here. Really felt like the range was going to hold, but I think not retesting this downtrend and coming up short of the support there was your clue on this second entry short. So yeah, odd day. Never retested that big downtrend. Just reversed, and it's done that a lot lately. So yeah, I think you had the second entry short here. Go to my mouse. You had the second entry short here. You had the second entry long here, kind of odd with how you had to enter on either of these bars, and you had to go for a small scalp. And then you had the second entry long here that you had to enter on a retracement on a limit order, and then maybe you take a chance on that really nice bar right there, especially with the speed at which it formed. So I'll actually end up marking that one super aggressive just because of how far it moved before it formed, but maybe you take it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. If you're interested in more of our content, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're interested in trading how we trade, check out our course at toppicktrading.com. And if you have any questions, just comment in the video below. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a good weekend.